The floats control the fuel delivery. However, if the floats are not properly adjusted, a fuel starvation or a flooding effect could result. This operation is difficult to do accurately on a rough idling vehicle, but not totally impossible.
For a mechanical fuel pump, remove the main coil wire and crank the engine over for about 10 seconds to allow the fuel bowls to fill. This procedure can prevent a possible backfire. Reconnect the coil wire when finished. For electric fuel pumps, let the fuel bowls fill in stages by turning the ignition key on and then off. Only let the fuel pump run for a few seconds at a time. This procedure can prevent the needle from being forced up at an angle, not allowing the needle to seat properly. At this time, you should also check your fuel pressure. Flooding will occur if the pressure exceeds 7.5 psi. The fuel pressure should be no more than 7 psi, and 6 is ideal. With the engine off, start by removing the sight plugs from the fuel bowl to verify the current fuel level. With the correct fuel pressure and float level setting, you should see a slight trickle of fuel at the bottom of the sight plug hole when the vehicle is gently rocked in a side-to-side motion. If no fuel is seen at the bottom of the sight plug hole, the fuel level is too low. If fuel flows freely from the sight hole when the plug is removed, then the fuel level is too high. Anything other than a slight trickle at the bottom of the sight plug hole will require additional adjustment of the float to correct the fuel level in the bowl. If the fuel level is too low, you need to raise the float assembly in the fuel bowl. While the engine is still off, loosen the lock screw a few turns and then pry up slightly on the adjusting nut that's under it. This will break the gasket seal between the locking screw and the adjusting nut and keep them from tearing during adjustment. For now though, cinch the locking screw down tight again before you start the vehicle. Now start the engine, and while it's running, remove the sight plug and turn the lock screw counterclockwise to loosen. Vehicles with electric fuel pumps do not need to be started for fuel level adjustment. Be aware that the fuel will be under pressure and most likely will be discharged at the needle when performing a float level adjustment on a running engine. Wear safety glasses and cover the needle with a rag during adjustment to prevent fuel from coming in contact with hot engine parts. You could even poke your screwdriver through the rag and place a 5/8 box wrench, then your screwdriver, and let the rag drop in place. This will absorb any spraying fuel during the adjustment. The fuel level is adjusted by turning the adjusting nut while holding the lock screw in place up top. A slight turn of the adjustment nut counterclockwise with your fingers or a 5/8 wrench will allow the fuel level to rise immediately within the bowl. Keep turning until the fuel level reaches the bottom of the sight hole. If the fuel level is too high, you're going to have to lower the float assembly in the fuel bowl. When the fuel level is too high inside the bowl, you can't lower the fuel level by externally adjusting the needle and seat. The float in the bowl needs to be lowered first and then the fuel level raised inside the bowl if needed. To lower the float, keep the engine off and remove the sight plug, allowing any excess fuel to drain from the sight hole onto a shop towel. Now you need to rock the vehicle a little to slosh additional fuel out of the bowl. Any additional fuel has to be removed to achieve the proper float level setting. Failure to lower the fuel level below the sight plug before adjustment will result in a bottomed out float on the floor of the bowl. At this point, you'll want to loosen the lock screw, free the adjustment nut from the gasket, and turn the adjustment nut clockwise, about a 1/2 to 3/4 of a turn, and then retighten the lock screw. Start the engine to refill the fuel bowl. Check to see where the fuel level is in relation to the sight hole. Continue to follow the proper procedures until the fuel level is at the bottom of the sight hole. When the level looks correct, reinstall the sight plug and tighten it for safety. On models with sight windows, you should see the fuel level just appear in the bottom of the window. To finish, tighten the lock screw while holding the adjusting nut. Replace the sight plug and lightly tighten with a screwdriver. If your carburetor has no external float adjustment, remove the sight plugs to observe the fuel level. A slight trickle should be seen at the threads. If not, please contact Holley Technical Service for the proper procedures on correcting the fuel.